The Human Target issue 11, Tom King writing, Greg Smallwood on the art, the penultimate issue of this, and it packs a bit of an emotional punch here or there, dare I say.
Yeah.
Yeah, so obviously he confronted, Chance that is, confronted Ice with her lies in the last issue. And this issue just kind of follows on with what happened after that, what they do on the 11th day, which is she basically says she doesn't want to talk about it. And he mentions that, some point during the night they had sex when she woke up, and then
she woke him up and had her way, believe her thee, or had at me or whatever. And I was like, geez, Chance.
I believe the exact wording was, sometime in the night she woke me and had me.
Yeah.
Had me was the phrase. And then next day they go to the beach because they spent some time there before, and they, go into the water and they make out. She makes like a little ice raft with a deck chair and a palm tree on it for them to snuggle and whatnot. And all this is very contemplative. It's very kind of basking in the moment, even though they've kind of revealed this truth. And she even cracks a joke a little bit because he says at one point, "I like it when you lie," and she's like, "You've never heard me tell the truth." But I've kind of felt like for a long time with this book that there is real feelings there, and I think that's kind of finally confirmed, where they're lying in the water, and he says, "Well, you miss me," and she says, "Shut up," and both of their eyes are closed, and the panels do this thing where it gets closer to them as it goes down the page, and he says, "Well, I got lucky because I won't have to miss you." And he says, "I'll just be gone." And then you see her eyes, like the tears coming out of her eyes as she's lying there. And it's this idea that, she reveals that, me and Fire conspired to kill Lex because he was behind my death. And we had
Overmaster stuff.
Yeah, he brought in Overmaster and he killed me, so I wanted him killed. But Fire said, "Oh, you can't just kill him with something cold because it'll obviously be you. We have to do something that won't lead back to you." And it's like, it's actually as simple as it always was. It was the first thing that Chance thought, is that Ice wanted him dead because he tried to kill her. Fire helped her out with it, so did Guy Gardner. And basically when Christopher Chance became involved, Fire said, "You should keep an eye on him because you're sweet and innocent, and he'll never think that you did it. If he gets to know you, he'll never think you did it." But of course, the tragedy of this is that in this time, it feels like she has actually fallen for him, and she does have a genuine connection with him. So it's not just that she's in love with him. Obviously, I think from the get-go, there was probably a guilt, because this guy who's innocent is like the one who's actually dying because of what you did. But knowing she's already responsible for his death, she's also fallen in love with him.
It's crazy, too, that this has only been 11 days. And all of this emotional baggage has happened between the two. And of course, for us, it's been coming on a year, right? It's probably over a year at this point because we had that slight break with that.
Yeah, there was like a
special
3 or 4 month break. Yeah, so over a year. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but in the scheme of the book, it's only been 10 days. So, like, whatever happened between them happened fast, and it was almost as if Ice hadn't had time to fully process everything. And that's what I love here, is that this issue takes its time, and us spending with Ice as she's explaining these things, and it's almost as if she's starting to process it as we're reading all of this stuff. And
it's notable she doesn't actually start telling and explaining the story until after that emotional moment where she feels bad because he's that, she is going to miss him. And it kind of escalates from there, where they get back to, he jumps in the water, they end up back at the beach, right?
At the shore,
yeah. And it becomes this confrontation where she like smashes the car with her ice and gets angry and says, "I'm not sweet, I'm not nice," and she slaps him and basically insists that he take his revenge, that she be punished for what she's done. So the actual guilt of it really comes pouring out of her. And even like sort of brings up Chance's father and how his father died and how he was sort of begging for his life, and don't be like him. You don't want to be like him. So take it. And you get that gorgeous 2-page spread where she's put a gun in his hand and she's made him point it at her head, and it's just this 2-page spread of her saying "I love you," and she's basically saying, "I want to give you this revenge. I want you to take this and have your ending before you die because I love you," right? So there's a lot of emotion pent up, and then the cliffhanger is just a quiet page of like the panels. You can see the water on the beach, you can see the car sitting there, you see a seagull looking at, and you see the beach, and you never hear a bang. There's never a gunshot. It's like sound effect. It's just the quietness that it ends on, and it's, you know, I don't think he does kill her, but the issue is ending with it's ending with him in this moment where he has to make this choice. Is he going to do it? And I think what's so fascinating to me about this book is that it's so simple and yet so complex at the same time, where like the actual mystery ended up being the simplest answer that was kind of presented all the way back at the start, but what's made it complex is this like guilt mixed with anger, and it's almost like she wants to like him to kill her to give him the ending because she feels guilty, but also she doesn't have to live with what she's done because she actually does care about him, and she's going to have to live with that. So I think if nothing else,
I was gonna say it's a mirror to his sentence of I get off lucky, is I just stopped to exist. You're the one that's left the guilt, and now like that's hit her. And you know,
I mean, if nothing else, I would say that the crowning achievement of this book is making us feel the connection between these two and feel the romance and feel how he feels about her throughout. Like that has been nailed so much throughout the art and throughout the storytelling across these 11 issues, that everything in this issue hit really hard because it felt like wondering if it was real from her. And then finding out in this issue, no, it was real. Like, it's real despite the fact that it started from this place of, like, keeping an eye on him, from lying to him. But the feelings that she developed were still very much real.
Right. She's a femme fatale, but not on purpose, right? Like, she's still responsible for his death. Yeah. And she did a lot of the shady stuff. But it didn't come from a place of purpose, right? He just got caught in the crossfire because he's the human target, you know? And he's going to get hit no matter what. I still think he has an ace up his sleeve with the poison, you know. I don't think this ends with the death of Christopher Chance in the way that we think. I
mean, we've been speculating that since issue 1 because it's human target. We've questioned that since day 1.
It's the fact that he talked about he's great at biding his time because he goes, you know, not every case pays that great. And so sometimes he'll take a job from like a rich person that doesn't want to do jail time. And so he'll go and spend time in jail, right? Do whatever he needs to, gets killed. And by the time he makes it out of the jail or the prison, the rich person's living off of an island, you know, forgotten by everybody else and stuff.
Yeah. The book obviously brought up his relationship with his father and how his father died, and Ice brings it up here. But this issue also starts with a memory of his father in the beach, where his father's like trying to teach him how to skip rocks, and he can't do it. But his father says, you know, hey, you've got all day. Like, sun's just coming up. Obviously that sets the mood for this final day where because they go to the beach and they end up staying out there until the sun goes down,
sunset.
So like they're kind of like saying, what do you want to do in your last full day? And this is what they do. This is their peaceful time together. But I think also this idea that he learned from his father how to bide his time and not rush, I think is something that is thematically going to be relevant, where I think the book's almost given as a red herring that, I mean, it's still relevant, don't get me wrong, but I think it's almost a red herring that we're dealing purely with like his memory and how he feels about his father's death, when I think whatever he does in the last issue is probably going to be something that he learned from his father from like a happier memory, something that came from before.
For sure.
You know, that was the vibe I was getting just from the way this issue started, and like then bringing up his father again later on.
Well, and the fact that she tries to use the memory of his father against him. You know, don't die like your father. But you know, he's already made the decision that he's not going to. He's fully experiencing all this stuff. He's not begging for his life in any way.
No.
And he's at terms with it. And just the fact too that the last quarter of this book, right, is with the sunset, and just the fact that this is the second to last issue, And so just thematically how well that all works.
Yeah, this is getting into his last. This was his last full day because he's going to die sometime tomorrow.
Yeah.
Basically, yeah. So
right. And so
it's there to remind you that the clock's ticking down without a literal clock.
And and the colors are just so beautiful, and we get all of the interactions where she finally loses her cool and smacks him and destroys the car and all this other stuff. Everything is in, that twilight effect, right? Where the sun's going down, but it's not all the way down, but there's still shadows. And she's in shadow this whole time, right?
Yeah.
After that.
And ignoring that we think he might have something up his sleeve getting the last issue, I think there's this interesting idea that he is biding his time and he's in the peacefulness of this day and everything is peaceful. It's just it's the beach. There's no one else there. It's just the water. It's just them. And her frustration is that she wants to be proactive and do something. So she wants to sort of like make an explosive finale. Whereas he seems quite content, at least right now, he seems content to just let it play out and sort of ride off into a quiet sunset. But she can't live with that. She can't do that. She has to there has to be some sort of dramatic action to take place to give it a final moment. And I think that kind of difference between them. So I am fascinated to see how he pays off this quiet cliffhanger. It's both a huge cliffhanger, but it's also a very quiet cliffhanger. It's literally a quiet cliffhanger. So I thought that was a very poignant ending, and it felt like the sort of thing that you get to the end of an episode of a TV show, and it would cut to the credits on the quiet moment, and leave you just kind of like desperate for more. Like, oh, come on. Yeah. So.
No, I still can't just get over the colors on this.
It's so much of it's reflective, so much of it's like him thinking about his life, and the thing that matters most to him actually might be her now in this last week of his life. So I think that's quite fascinating as well. Yeah,
and I like all the art here, right, where there's a lot of she's recounting the story to him as they're sitting on that ice float, right. It's that we've seen it before, where the art's on like the right side of the page or the left side of the page, and all of the speech boxes are in this white void on the other side. Yeah. And it adds this dramatic effect to everything, which I can't even think of a way, if this was filmed, how they would play that out. But
I think if this was like a movie, the same effect you would get from basically like putting almost putting like a CRT filter on it to make it feel like it's like something from a TV screen, so it feels like a story and not part of the real world that the rest of the movie's in.
Because like when she's talking about Guy, right, and he says, a few years past, I spend them with as kind, sweet ice, and then guys at my house ranting and raving. The way that she's in full color, fuller color, she's blue, right, in her color, like her superhero costume, but Guy's in the orange, where he just kind of is just part of the background. He's just part of the scenery, because he's not the focus. It's these little things here that Smallwood does so great, right? And I'm sure a lot of that also came from King and the script, but just the stylistic choices in this book.
Yeah, I think the important part is that when she's explaining this backstory stuff, is that those panels feel very distinct from all the other art in the book. They feel like they are a story from the past, whereas everything in the main part of the book, including like Chris talking about this memory of his father, gets the full like, oh, this feels very cinematic. It feels like all the big panels, the big spreads, everything feels very serene, and like, whereas those like small boxes that those backstory beats play out when she's telling the explaining the backstory, they feel very confined and claustrophobic. They feel like they're uncomfortable because they're in these small windows in time. And they feel very tense because of it. Whereas despite the fact that he's counting down to his final days, everything on the beach feels very peaceful.
Open.
Yeah. It feels like, so...
She's the one is locked up, even though he's...
She's the one who feels tense right now, despite the fact that he's the one who's dying. Yeah.
Right. So, yeah, man, this book just works on so many levels. It's ridiculous how every time, it manages to, like... Not that it does something different, but it maintains and it elevates, just through storytelling. Because like this is a very quiet issue, and it comes across with these like open vistas, and then you get to that's like we were talking about. It feels very claustrophobic, right? And then when it jumps back to Chance, right? I'm trying to find that page because when it goes back, and at the end of that, it's her laying on him. and then at the bottom of the page it jumps back to the regular style art, and just how much bigger that panel is compared to everything. It's just storytelling at its finest.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic. I can't wait to see how it wraps up in the final issue. But this is a very, very emotional kind of like quiet issue before the even though the emotions are quite big, and obviously it escalates at the end with the gun stuff. But the way it builds in that from such a quiet place where they kind of just like went about without talking about the fact that he'd kind of figured it out, and it just sort of was there and awkward. Like all of that just feels like it's oozing in mood, and I just kind of love it. So, what are you giving the Human Target issue 11?
9.5.
Yeah, I agree. 9.5. Fantastic.